Today, I want to talk about something that could be very practical for you, which is living on a boat. Now, I've been living aboard off and on, mostly on, since 1987. We had been living in a house and, of course, enjoying that in a place called Columbia, Maryland, kind of a bedroom community for Baltimore and Washington. And at the time, almost 40 years ago, we had been attempting to start a family. And that was not going well. We were not succeeding. We said, well, what's dream number two? And dream number two was, instead of going to our boat 2 or 3 days every week and on the weekends, we would actually buy a boat that would be big enough to live on. And since then, I have lived aboard and enjoyed it for all that time, almost 40 years. So, why would you want to live on a boat? Well, for one thing, economics. In this day and age, it's increasingly more expensive to own a home, putting it outside the reach of many people. Also, it's incredibly challenging with all the different financing programs, things that one needs to do. However, living on a boat can be extremely economical. It's a kind of a economy of scale, if you will. It's a smaller footprint once the boat is paid for, and in many cases, and I'll tell you a little bit later, how to acquire a boat inexpensively. You're basically only paying for the electricity and the slip rent. Some people don't even pay for that. They are out on the hook, but I've never done that. I've always lived in a marina and hooked up to what's called shore power. So I hook up to shore power. These days you can actually create your own power by using solar, but back then that didn't exist nearly as much, although boaters have been doing solar and wind and you name it, and we come up with different ways to be able to generate our power. But let's just say that you're going to use the power that's provided. And of course, you hook up to water, and depending on where you are in the country, you may or may not have winter to deal with. I've lived in Maryland mostly, so it's kind of a temperate zone. We do have winter. And I've also lived on a boat in Florida. And then you've got to concern yourself with air conditioning, and we can talk about how to do that. But the benefits of living on a boat, well, for one thing, you have waterfront property all the time. Depending on where you're at, you may or may not have wave action or tidal action or boat traffic to deal with. But I'm going to suggest to you that, in my opinion, it is absolutely worth it. So the idea here is you need to be able to, number one, acquire a boat. And let's talk about that for a second. You can certainly find mini boats on a variety of different websites on the internet. You can go on Facebook Marketplace and just type in large boat or houseboat, and you'll be able to find hundreds, if not thousands of them. The key is, depending on your budget, you may or may not have to pay a lot, a little, or maybe even anything, maybe $1. I've bought lots of boats for $1. And the reason is because for people that are housebound and they're not going to live aboard their boat, in many cases that boat just becomes an expense. It's something that they have to deal with. And after a while, or especially if they're going through a tough time financially, they might just say, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to just unload this? It's costing me thousands of dollars a year to maybe not use it. So, in those circumstances, if you're willing to take on the boat, sometimes it needs love or cleaning or whatever. And because you're going to be living on it, you're probably not going to be traveling around with your boat. You'll just be staying on it. That might be an extremely good situation for both of you. a win-win, as they say. So you may be able to simply acquire the boat and acquire it for a small amount of money, or maybe even no money, which I have done. So the key is that you have to ask in order to get. So you go out and you look on Facebook, you look on Marketplace, and often you will see boats that are relatively inexpensive, a couple of $1,000s, maybe nothing. And you want to go and look at those boats and look at them with an open mind. Look at them with where you're going to keep the boat. A little research here goes a long way. And understanding what the motivation is, the person who's getting rid of that boat. I got a 43-foot houseboat one time, a Gibson 43. Didn't have engines, didn't need them. I just was looking for a place to live. And a boat broker friend of mine was the one that turned me onto that. And I said, well, okay, who owns the boat? It was pretty funny. Her name was actually Janet Jackson. I thought, probably not the Janet Jackson, and it turns out no. And I called her up and I said, hey, listen, I need a place to live, and you have this boat here that apparently you're not using, and it keeps filling up with water, and the marina keeps emptying it out for you. Why don't you let me have the boat for $1? And she goes, oh, I could never do that. I says, well, here's what's going on. Your boat needs to be emptied out right now. I'll be happy to do it for you for free, no problem. Said, however, we do have a big storm coming. And if that boat sinks, then you're going to be hit with all the impact fees, and it's not going to be a pretty thing. And then you're going to have to raise that sunken boat. Now, if I take it, I take on all the responsibility. And she said, you know what? You're right. $1 sounds good. And I got the boat for $1. And I moved on board and emptied it out and tied it up really good. And when the storm came in, it did. A couple of days later, we rode it out just fine. And I had that boat for a couple of years and finally sold it to a couple of old gentlemen who then took that boat over for themselves, and I got something bigger and better, or nicer for sure. So, win-win is the key. And you won't know unless you're willing to go out there and look and ask. And quite often, if you're looking at things from a realistic standpoint of what they may or may not be willing to do, you might be able to pick that boat up for nothing. People donate boats all the time. Why not to you? So, once you've acquired your boat, then the process is making sure that your boat is livable and isn't going to sink. Good pumps are a good thing. So just make sure that all of that is done. You could even hire somebody to do that. Local boat mechanic for $100 an hour will probably be more than happy to go down and just make sure that all systems are go, and especially if they think that they are going to be your go-to person in case something does come up in the future. After that, you have an extremely inexpensive, I've rarely seen it be more than $1,000 a month, and that's pretty typical for slip rent. Sometimes a lot less, $600, $500, $400. Where I'm at right now, it's about $2,500 for the whole year. And then I pay my electric bill, which ranges anywhere from about $160 on really cold winters. It might go up to $300. But compare that to the huge electric bills of heating a house and the rent or the mortgage and anything that comes up that you've got to deal with. So I think living on a boat can be a very elegant solution. Anyway, if this gives you a little bit of motivation about living aboard, and I really believe that you can, and many people do, leave a like in the comment section, leave a comment in the comment section, or hit the like button, smash that like button, leave a comment in the comment section. And as these videos continue, I'll talk about some of the things that you can be looking at to be able to make your living aboard a more pleasant experience. Anyway, until then, have a blessed day.